The restaurant glowed that evening like a palace of glass. Crystal chandeliers cast their light over tables set with silver cutlery and tall vases of roses. Waiters in crisp uniforms glided back and forth, their movements rehearsed like clockwork. The air hummed with laughter, champagne glasses clinking, and the low hum of an orchestra in the corner. But Daniel barely noticed the glamour. To him, tonight was just another long shift, another night on his feet, making sure rich men and women never had to lift a finger. He moved quickly between tables, balancing trays with practiced ease, the weight no heavier than the burdens he already carried. Being a single father left no room for mistakes. At 32, Daniel's life had settled into a rhythm of sacrifice. He worked 2 jobs. Days in a small auto repair shop, nights in this upscale restaurant. His daughter, Emily, was the reason he endured it all. She was 8, bright-eyed, curious about everything, and his anchor in the stormy sea of bills and exhaustion. Most nights, she waited quietly in the staff lounge with her coloring books until his shift ended. But tonight, she had been restless. "Papa," she whispered earlier, tugging at his sleeve before the first guests arrived. "Why do you always have to work when there's music?" Daniel kissed the top of her head, smoothing her wild curls. "Because music doesn't pay for school shoes, sweetheart. But I promise, one day, I'll dance with you under the stars." Now, as the hall filled with silks and jewels, Daniel caught glimpses of her peeking out from the back hallway, eyes wide at the splendor. He shook his head gently, signaling her to stay hidden. This party wasn't for them. It was for Victor Orlov. Victor was the kind of man whose shadow stretched across the city. A tycoon who owned banks, factories, and politicians in equal measure. His parties were legendary, not just for their extravagance, but for the way everyone in attendance bent themselves into knots to please him. Tonight was no exception. The occasion was his daughter Sophia's birthday. Whispers about Sophia traveled through the staff long before the first guest arrived. Some said she never smiled. Others said she hadn't left her father's mansion in years. The cruelest rumors pointed to the fire, an accident that had scarred her face when she was barely 20. Since then, the once celebrated beauty had disappeared from society's eye, surfacing only when her father commanded. Daniel finally saw her when the orchestra began its first piece. She sat at a long table near the front, a pale figure in a flowing gown. Her hair, dark and thick, veiled one side of her face, but the scars were still visible, curling along her cheek like shadows left by flame. She kept her gaze down, fiddling with the stem of her glass, ignoring the dancers who swept across the marble floor. No one approached her, no one dared. It was as though an invisible wall surrounded her chair, erected by her father's silent decree. Daniel's chest tightened. He knew what it was like to be invisible, to be overlooked. He didn't pity her. He recognized her loneliness. The night unfolded in golden excess. Guests told jokes too loudly, praised Victor too eagerly, danced as if their joy might earn them his favor. Daniel carried plates of foie gras and sparkling wine, slipping unnoticed between the rich. He felt out of place, like a shadow moving through a world of blinding light. And then it happened. Emily slipped past the staff hallway and into the glittering hall. Daniel's heart lurched. He set down his tray on a passing cart and pushed through the crowd, searching for her small figure. But Emily was already across the room, standing beside Sophia's chair. The girl looked so small compared to the towering guests, yet her voice carried clearly in the hush between songs. "Do you want to dance?" Heads turned. Sophia blinked, startled. She glanced around, as if expecting laughter, but the only sound was the rustle of silk gowns. "No one asks me that," she whispered. Emily tilted her head. "Why not? My dad says everyone deserves to dance at least once. Wait here, I'll get him." Before Sophia could reply, Emily darted through the crowd. Daniel caught her halfway, kneeling down. "Emily, what did I tell you about staying?" She cut him off, tugging his hand with surprising strength. "Daddy, she's sad. Dance with her, please." Daniel froze, caught between duty and instinct. He glanced up. Sophia was watching him, her scarred face pale under the lights, her eyes wide with something between fear and longing. Across the hall, Victor Orlov's gaze was a blade of ice. His jaw was tight, his hand gripping his glass like it might shatter. Every instinct told Daniel to back away, to protect his job, to keep his head down. But then he remembered the look in Sophia's eyes, the look of someone waiting for permission to exist. He straightened, smoothed his apron, and walked to her table. Setting his tray aside, he bowed slightly and extended a hand. "May I?" The orchestra began another piece, a slow and haunting melody. A hush fell over the room. Sophia hesitated. Her hands trembled, her breath quickened. For years, she had avoided the spotlight, avoided the pitying stares. But something in Daniel's steady gaze, something unpolished and kind, reached her in a way no one else had. She placed her hand in his. Daniel led her gently to the center of the floor. The guests whispered, the chandeliers reflected in their wide eyes. A waiter and the daughter of a tycoon, it was unthinkable. At first, her movements were stiff, awkward. She kept her head low, her hair shielding half her face. Daniel moved slowly, guiding her with care, his steps patient and unhurried. "Don't think of them," he murmured. "Just the music, just us." Something loosened in her chest. She dared to look up, to meet his eyes. His expression held no judgment, no curiosity, only calm acceptance. The music swelled. Sophia's body began to respond, her steps smoothing, her rhythm finding its place. The scars on her face did not vanish, but for the first time, they did not matter. She closed her eyes. She let herself move, and for a moment, the hall was silent. Guests stopped talking. Forks froze above plates, even the waiters forgot their tasks. All eyes fixed on the woman they had long pitied or ignored, who now spun gracefully under the chandeliers, guided not by wealth or power, but by kindness. When the song ended, the applause came slowly, hesitant at first, then swelling into genuine warmth. Sophia stood breathless, her cheeks flushed, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Daniel stepped back, bowing slightly. "Thank you for the dance," he whispered. But across the room, Victor Orlov's pride cracked like glass. His empire, his power, his control, all of it meant nothing in that moment. For it was not he who had given his daughter joy. It was a waiter, a single father, a man he considered beneath him. And the realization struck harder than any insult ever could. The final notes of the song trembled in the air, fading into silence before the applause rose like a wave. Guests clapped politely at first, then with genuine enthusiasm, as though they had witnessed something rare, something real. Sophia stood in the center of the marble floor, breathless, her scars illuminated by the chandeliers but softened by the glow in her eyes. For years, she had hidden behind veils of shame, trapped not only by her father's commands but by her own fear. And yet, with the guidance of a man whose name she did not even know, she had danced. She had felt free, but not everyone was celebrating. At the head of the hall, Victor Orlov's face had darkened. His glass trembled in his grip, the champagne inside catching the light like liquid gold. Guests closest to him shifted uneasily, sensing the storm building in his chest. Victor was a man who had built his life on control. Every detail of his empire, every move of his rivals, every smile at his parties, it all bent to his will. But here, in the space of a single song, his daughter had chosen joy in defiance of his silence. And worse, she had found it in the arms of a waiter. He slammed his glass onto the table with a sound like a gunshot. The applause died instantly. Heads turned, conversations snapped shut. "Enough." Victor's voice rang through the hall, sharp and commanding. Sophia flinched. Daniel instinctively stepped closer to her, shielding her slightly with his presence. Emily, who had watched wide-eyed from the edge of the dance floor, darted forward and clutched at her father's hand. The tycoon's heavy footsteps struck the marble as he approached, each one echoing louder than the orchestra ever had. His guests parted like water, creating a wide path for him. The silence was suffocating. Victor stopped just a foot away from Daniel. He loomed tall, his tailored suit exuding power, his eyes like cold steel. "You dare," he spat, "put your hands on my daughter. You, a servant." Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "She asked for kindness, sir. That's all I gave." Victor sneered, his lip curling. "Kindness." He turned sharply, addressing the hall. "Is this what passes for kindness now? That my daughter must be pitied, paraded around with some nobody, to be laughed at by all of you?" His gaze swept the room, daring anyone to contradict him. No one did. The air was thick with fear. But then, soft, shaky, and yet sharper than the silence, came Sophia's voice. "Papa, stop." The words hung in the air, more powerful than any shout. Sophia had not raised her voice against her father since before the fire. He blinked, startled, as though he had not recognized her. She stepped forward, her hand still trembling but her back straighter than ever before. "He didn't pity me. He saw me. For once, I wasn't invisible." Her voice gained strength with every word. "Do you know what it feels like to sit in your own birthday party, and no one even look at you? To have your own father treat you like a broken thing to be hidden?" Gasps rippled through the guests. Victor's face reddened, but he said nothing. Sophia's eyes glistened, but her voice did not break. "All your money, all your power, and not once did you give me what he gave me in a single dance, dignity." The words struck him harder than any rival ever had. Victor opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Daniel placed a steady hand on Emily's shoulder, keeping her close. He knew he was walking a dangerous line, but he could not stay silent either. "Sir," he said softly, "with respect, scars don't steal a person's worth. What I saw tonight wasn't broken. It was brave." The hall was utterly still. Even the orchestra had lowered their instruments, waiting. Victor's pride battled within him like a caged beast. He wanted to roar, to banish this insolent man, to drag his daughter back into the shadows where no one could hurt her, or defy him. But behind the fury, something cracked. He saw his daughter's face, flushed from dancing, her eyes bright in a way he had not seen since before the fire. And he realized with a hollow ache that it had taken a stranger to bring her back to life. The silence stretched until Sophia broke it herself. She turned to Daniel, her voice gentler now. "Thank you. No one has ever looked at me like that, not even him." Her father flinched at the words. Guests whispered nervously, some avoiding Victor's gaze, others watching Sophia with new respect. The power in the room had shifted. For once, it was not Victor who commanded it. It was the scarred daughter who had chosen to step into the light. Victor felt something wet in his eyes and fought it back with fury. He had spent decades building a fortress of pride, brick by brick, deal by deal. To show weakness now would unravel him. And yet, the fortress was already crumbling, not from outside attacks but from the truth within. He turned abruptly, his voice strained. "The party is over." But Sophia stepped in front of him, her shoulders squared. "No, Papa, the party has just begun, for me." The words struck the hall like thunder. For the first time, she wasn't obeying. She wasn't whispering. She was claiming her own voice. Guests began to applaud again, louder this time, bolder. Not for Victor, but for Sophia. For her courage, her defiance, her decision to live. Victor stood frozen, the applause pounding in his ears like drums of war. His empire meant nothing in that moment. His control meant nothing. He was no longer the man everyone applauded. He was just a father, standing in the ruins of his own pride, watching his daughter choose freedom over fear. Sophia took Daniel's hand, then Emily's, lifting them both as though to say, "These are the ones who gave me back my life." Victor's lips trembled. He wanted to shout, to command, to pull her back into silence. But instead, a single tear slipped down his cheek. He turned away, ashamed not of her scars, but of his own blindness. The orchestra, uncertain but moved by the moment, began to play again. The melody rose, soft and defiant. Sophia led Daniel back to the floor, this time without hesitation. She no longer hid her scars. She no longer bowed her head. She danced as the hall erupted in applause, louder than ever, drowning out the remnants of her father's broken pride. And Victor Orlov, for the first time in his life, was forced to face the truth. Power could bend nations, pride could build empires, but only love could set a soul free.